A Hairy Problem by Blue Bastard. Chapter 7. Lo, the Mighty Hunter. In the capital of the Minotaur Kingdom, Hyperiton, a very frustrated self-help instructor, was finding himself having to deal with his parents as he spent some self-allowed vacation time in his native country.
Mom, Dad, Iron Will doesn't understand why you guys don't think being a self-help motivational speaker isn't paying the bills. Outside that one incident in Ponyville with that timid Pegasus pony, considering Iron Will's successes afterwards with his no means no angle of speaking, Iron Will doesn't consider that much of a setback. The money has been more than enough to keep Iron Will and his assistants well sustained on my lectures.
Well, it's not the money we are worried about, answered his mother, but we simply want to know, when are you going to settle down and find a cow of your very own?
Iron Will does not have that kind of time. Son,
intoned his father, maximum strength,
when are you going to stop referring yourself to the third person, complete the ritual, and earn yourself a mate?
Iron Will face-palmed. The ritual of his family spoke of was of an ancient cultural norm that all male minotaurs were to engage in when they had reached the legal age of consent, to prove that they were worthy of representing their race, and also to attract those of the opposite sex to take their hand in marriage. Most of the ritual revolved around simple ceremonies and basic demonstrations of strength, but the final requirement was a doozy. In order to fully establish themselves as a true minotaur, the males had to go out into the world and bring out the body of the most savage animal they could kill. Iron Will's problem was that he never actually killed anything in his life, because something more important had come up.
Iron Will has told you both of why that is. The book deal has been approved, and the ritual had to be overlooked if Iron Will was to make it big as a motivational speaker. Well, now that you say being a motivational speaker is so lucrative, then you should have all the time in the world to hunt down that creature and get hitched to an attractive mate. Who knows? You might even encounter a werewolf,
replied his father. Iron Will's pupils shrunk. While in normal circumstances, a male was more sexually attractive to potential mates based on how big the corpse was, the modern record was held by the Minotaur named Steel Grip, who had managed to drag an entire quarry eel from the land of Equestria all back the way to Hyperton. Pretty much every single female candidate in the kingdom had been trying to break the poor guy's door down to propose marriage ever since. Wow, sounds like Krogan rituals. Commander Shepard, the Krogans are still listing mating requests. But the one exception to the rule was the legendary werewolf. Due to a savage attack from one that had killed the Minotaur Queen centuries ago, the distraught king had declared that any Minotaur who brought him the corpse of a werewolf would instantly become engaged to the princess. To date, no Minotaur had ever killed a werewolf, as it was believed that they were extinct shortly afterwards. Apparently, they had all been involved with the losing side of the Equestrian Civil War at the time, with some believing the king himself had made the whole story up to justify killing his wife. But recently, the current princess, Cersei... Nice! Clever! Clever, Blue Bastard! Bravo! Had come of age, and her father, a bleak believer in tradition, had made the announcement that she was fair game, as well as the granting of a dukedom for anyone who became the werewolf slayer. Yes! Interjected Will's mother, that Princess Cersei would make a fine mate for you. She is of marrying age, after all. Plus, it would also boost your social status beyond a mere motivational speaker, or whatever it is you do. Iron Will blushed. It was true that he had a crush on the beautiful Princess Cersei since he was a small calf, but it wasn't out of an unwillingness to actually marry her that worried him.
Mom, no one has seen a werewolf in hundreds of years. How can Iron Will hunt a creature that is almost certainly extinct?
Well, that means you're certain to get a cow when you kill the werewolf now, doesn't it? Besides, if you cannot slay a werewolf, at least get yourself a pansy or a helicoprion. Well, it's been announced that the old declaration still holds. I'm sure something of equal rarity and ferocity would suffice. Iron Will knew bear. A banshee was technically already dead, so they didn't count, and in no way in Tartarus was Iron Will going to learn how to swim simply to hunt a stupid-looking shark that was also probably extinct. But, having run out of options, Iron Will decided he had to extend his vacation and take up being a werewolf hunter, dragging along his citizens, Willie and Nilly, the Billy Goats, if they wanted to be paid.
Okay, fine. Iron Will will track down a werewolf. But where would Iron Will even start to look for one?
Then it hit him. He never met her. Twilight Sparkle was well known throughout the world for her intellectual capabilities as the de facto leader of the Element Bearers. She knew where to start looking, and, if what he had learned during his stay in Ponyville was correct, she was the town librarian.
On second thought,
Contemplated the speaker-turned-hunter,
maybe this won't be so bad after all. Iron Will definitely approves of this voice acting.
In Golden Oak's library, the studious lavender mare was busy engaging in her favorite hobby, reading. Having already put a good debt into her read pile, it took a moment for her to realize Spike was calling for her attention. Twilight! Twilight! Something's going on inside! All right, I'll be down in a moment. Bookmarking her place in her current book, a recent sci-fi thriller known as Razorblade Angel, Twilight left the comfort of her bed and descended to the ground floor of her library home. She could hear the crowd making noise halfway down the steps, causing her to think, oh no, this better not be Trixie coming back to challenge me again. I thought all of that was water under the bridge between us. No, sadly, Trixie does not show up in this fic at all, which disappoints her greatly. Where's her agent? Upon opening the door, she did not find Trixie. Martial arts user is a sad reader, nor a crowd being angry at the subject of their attention. Instead, it was a giant blue minotaur wearing a headset and flanked on either side by two goats, also wearing headsets. The crowd was also cheering, which meant that whoever this individual was, they certainly had a good impression on him.
Hello, Miss Twilight Sparkle. Iron Will's my name, monster hunting is my game,
declared the minotaur, giving her $1 million bit smile and a thumbs up. At the thumbs up sign, a certain mint unicorn started foaming at the mouth at the back of the assembled crowd and had to be dragged away by her two Earth Pony friends for a medical treatment. So you're Iron Will? Asked Sparkle. While she hadn't been in town the last time the Minotaur had visited during her lecture tour due to royal student business, she had heard what happened between him and Fluttershy, or rather, new Fluttershy, and what that entailed. Still, the kind Megasis had no mean words to say about him, and it implied that they parted ways on acceptable terms. So Twilight had to go on her friend's intuition and not treat the Minotaur as a potential problem. I've heard about you. Is there something I can help you with?
As a matter of fact, there is, he declared. Is it all right if we talk in private?
Having no discernible exceptions, Twilight led him into the library along with his ghost assistants. Once the speaker and his entourage were inside, the crowd quickly dispersed, giving silence as the backdrop for the meeting going on inside the library. However, the moment Iron Will thought he was out of the public mind, his demeanor quickly changed from that of a confident speaker to somebody who was way over his head about something.
Look, Iron Will desperately needs your help with something, and you are the only one that can assist him.
Third person. Great, thought Twilight, really hoping the similarities between him and another certain blue individual Twilight and friends had trouble with before ended there. Okay, Mr. Will, how can I be of assistance? Smiling at the fact that the unicorn hadn't tried to do something rash like instantly murder him, along with her reputation for intelligence, her powers when she was mentally driven off her rocker were legendary. He asked the first of what would be many difficult questions.
Well, this is kind of complicated, so Iron Will may take a while to explain. Is that all right?
Judging him to be sincere with his request, while the goat pals appeared to be just living statues that didn't even need to breathe, Twilight answered in the affirmative before having Spike set about preparing some tea and snacks. If the Minotaur was going to be cordial, then Twilight should be hospitable. So, this problem of yours, what does it entail? Don't skip out any of the details, mind you.
You have no idea how much Iron Will appreciates this, Miss Sparkle. Anyways, Iron Will shall explain his current situation in regards to the rituals we Minotaurs have in terms of selecting mates.
It had been a week since Applejack had come clean about her strange behaviors, to which she was relieved that no pony ever tried inquiring about again, and for her part she done her best to try and control the wolf-like mannerisms that still showed throughout the day. After that night, she forced herself to remain in her pony form to keep up appearances. Almost every night she found the urge to transform into her wolf-like body. She'd been thankful that none of the rest of her family ever walked into her room, when she was decidedly more frightening in appearance. Plus, her repeated transformations have gotten significantly less painful, to the point where she could do it almost by will without feeling anything, even during the day. On top of that, she was feeling on average even more energetic than she had been before she was bitten. Her productivity in apple harvesting had gone up a fair bit due to her increased speed, so much that she had been able to finish earlier, which in turn allowed her to work on other things around the farm, such as painting the barn before the CMC tried using the red paint for something else to make it go 3 times faster, or something, and helping Granny with the cooking of more meat things to sell at the market. In fact, she noticed that a lot about her seemed to improve upon fully embracing her new status as a werewolf. Her hearing had gotten a lot sharper, so listening for danger had become a lot easier. Her sense of smell was also greater, to the point that even as far as the edge of the far fields she could still smell the fresh baked apple pie scent coming from the kitchen. She lamented the fact that smell no longer made her mouth water as much as it used to, but at least she hadn't completely lost the taste for the family's namesake fruit. Heck, it even still tasted good to her, which was better than suddenly finding them disgusting. Filling up the last of the apple baskets, she rehitched herself to the cart and began to haul the crop back to the barn once more. At a trying pace. Sure, it wasn't as fast as running, but it was faster than walking, and speed had surprisingly become a part of Applejack's modus operandi as of late. But as she arrived at her destination, she noticed Big Mac had suddenly showed up, looking at her curiously. "Something wrong, brother?" she inquired.
"Your harvesting of apples have gone up recently,"
commented the stallion.
"You sure you're feeling all right? First a period of where you're all acting all strange like, and all of a sudden you're at the top of your game. I know it's none of my business, but you have to admit it does seem a nice suspicious."
Applejack just smiled. "Black, I told you, I'm fine. My harvesting doesn't prove it, 'cause I dealt with those problems I was talking about on my own. Trust me, brother, there ain't nothing wrong."
"If you say so,"
Big Mac replied, before turning and heading out to go milk the cows. Inside his head, the word werewolf continued to blare widely and loudly in his head. But once again, he had little evidence to force a confession. Plus, maybe he had been wrong, and Applejack was in fact okay. He had heard from Pinky it had been a very private matter, which Applejack had been having issues. So Big Mac immediately figured out that they had really been, and had to wonder if there was some truth to that claim. At the same time, Applejack had retreated into the barn and proceeded to start scratching like a dog at some infernal itch that developed on her side. Thankful that Big Mac hadn't noticed, she allowed herself to give in to her new base need for just a second. Afterwards, she stood back up and regained her composure, stored the apples into growing surplus in the silo. Iron Will looked incredulously at the store before him.
"Iron Will is not so sure about this."
Next to him, a giddy Twilight Sparkle was positively ecstatic. "What are you talking about? This place certainly will have what you need to catch a werewolf. Plus, we might find other things too. I've always wanted to go inside." The unlikely duo found themselves in front of Ponyville's largest store, Rick's Barnyard Bargains. Allegedly, this was a place where one could find anything for an extremely low competitive price, as promised by the store's proprietor, Filthy Rich. Despite his name, Mr. Rich was a reasonable pony who believed his prices should be backed up by quality, unlike what practices his main competitor, Stallmart, reportedly had engaged in, cutting corners every chance he got to make a quick additional bid or two. That was the reasoning Twilight had used to decide everything Ironwill could get that would aid in his quest to seek the hand of the fair maiden, Princess Circe, would be from the store. And besides, Barnyard Bargains is the only place that has layaway anymore. And it had been to either Ironwill's fortune and or dismay that Twilight's biggest reason for helping him find a mythical monster was because it might get him married to a princess. The pony herself having been involved in a similar circumstance involving her brother and Princess Cadence, the ruler of the Empire. Twilight had turned out to be something of a hopeless romantic once Ironwill explained his story to her. So now here he found himself staring straight into the face of modern pony commercialism, all in a play to please his nagging parents and get married by slaying an ancient horror which may or may not exist. He just secretly hoped he wasn't going to end up dead or permanently humiliated by this. Oh my god. Guys, I just had a scary thought. But what if he had told this to Rarity? "Oh, you're doing this for love! Oh my goodness, this is just fabulous!" Finally entering the store, the two were subjected to a sight that screamed modernism. Aisles upon aisles of fiberglass were lined up before them, each pathway forward by them having giant signs marked above them that listed the kinds of things they contained. Aisle 3, bread. Aisle 5, eggs. Aisle 17, breaded eggs, etc. Iron Will had never seen so much commercial retail in one place. But then again, he usually just had things delivered by mail order to his hotel room during his speaking circuits, or just bought directly from the local street markets. Superstores like this one were practically unheard of back home, where despite the recent adoption of modern technology like telephones, many Minotaur families lived in old traditional ways of self-sustenance and small market economies. "Over here, Iron Will!" Twilight called, motioning for her new friend to follow. Aisle 57 was where she led him. A veritable paradise of hunting gear. Bear traps, sleeping darts, all kinds of things a pony would use to track down wild game. Or a Minotaur.
Iron Will has to question why ponies would need gear such as this. He was under the assumption that they were rather a peaceful society.
"Oh, don't worry. Ponies don't usually come here, I bet," responded Twilight. "A lot of the stuff seems geared more toward pest control, or for other species who aren't as in tune with nature as we ponies are. I bet Fluttershy would pass out as he learned this place had such hunting equipment as it does."
Iron Will sincerely doubts that,
replied Iron Will. He was serious. The usually quiet pony told him about her secret weapon, the stare, and the demonstration, and hit him full force with it in an attempt to be more assertive during her trial period in his self-program. He knew nothing that lay before him in this store could compete with such mind-numbing power as the piercing gaze of that one pony.
Still,
he thought as he handled a strange mechanism marked as Wolf Immobilizing Device.
Iron Will may not have the same abilities as Pegasus, but these devices do fine just in his place.
Oh look, they even have a recreation of Little Mac. I'll take that. Tonight is the night, thought Angel Bunny. He hid behind his mistress goodnight. Once he was sure she was asleep upstairs, it was time for him to get to work. Making sure that not to make as much noise, he hippity-hopped all his way over to the house, picking up materials he would need for his transformation, which he had hidden in secret caches all over. Soon he had everything he required, and setting up shop in the bathroom in front of the sink mirror, he got to work. First, the battle dress. Having collected all kinds of scraps of fabric from both Fluttershy's sewing kit and from extremely late-night trade sessions with Rarity's cat Opalescence that saw various foodstuffs traded for cloth bits. That cat would do anything for food that wasn't the designer brand cat kibble Rarity fed her. Angel got to work in making his uniform. For a bunny that had no prior experience in sewing clothes, he thought he did a fine job in making himself a pair of roomy camo trousers and a matching camo top. Then, his weapons. While Pone Rambo needed nothing but his wings and brute strength to beat into submission the changeling hordes, Angel knew he'd need some firepower to make up for his lack of strength. The armaments were simple enough. A small dart slingshot that fired needles, a pair of reinforced toothpick nunchaku, and a small emergency combat knife for desperate situations. He also crafted himself a pair of reflective goggles to fight off any cockatrices that he might encounter in the woods. Pone Rambo didn't need goggles. His stare was enough to freeze the cockatrices into stone. But as Angel was so hopelessly below the level of badass that was Pone Rambo, the goggles were a necessity. Pone Rambo, of course, was voiced by the pony Chuck Norris. And for me, the pony Chuck Norris is, of course... Take a wild guess. Here's a hint.
Yeah!
Then, the most important detail of all, the beard. Hauling out a 50-ounce piece of charcoal, Angel dirtied his paws as he applied the sacred substance to his face. He couldn't figure out how to replicate Pone Rambo's ability to have a reserve hoof to be able to shoot out of his beard and punch a changeling scum in the face. Let me read that again. He couldn't figure out how to replicate Pone Rambo's ability to have a reserve hoof to be able to shoot out of his beard and punch changeling scum in the face, but a fake 5 o'clock shadow made from charcoal was as close as Angel was going to get. And I thought I was reading the same fic today. Stepping back to get a good look at himself, he no longer was simple Angel Bunny, where he had turned into something more. Faster, craftier, more sexually appealing to all the other bunnies everywhere. He had become Rambo. He had become Rambo. I can do this! I can say this line! He had become Rambone! Fueled by confidence based on his new appearance and weaponry, he quickly made his way out Fluttershy's cottage, screaming bloody war cries as he charged off into the Everfree to kill manticores by the dozens and any changelings that stood in his way. Angel Bunny has gone hunting. There are no survivors. Queen Chrysalis stood on her private balcony, looking out at the night that Princess Luna had created, jealous of the younger Alicorn's powers. She had almost had that power for herself, along with Celestia's and Cadence's, but she overestimated the amount of love left in shining armor. As a result, she was back in her hive castle, nursing her wounds, listening to that stupid rhyme Pinky had set up. They had healed up for the most part. Only her wings had been totaled in the crash as she had landed on some sharp rocks, and until a new set grew in, she was forced to remain here in the wastelands, plotting revenge. Then, a shrilled, extremely high-pitched noise greeted her ears as it came from the far side of where she thought the Everfree Forest was. She tensed. "Rambo," she whispered, fear in her voice. She then quickly abandoned the charade and laughed. She knew of the movie, having sent her minions to go steal one of the experimental televisions and all the movies available for it. She was a queen after all, and deserved only the best in modern tech. Speaking of which, she thought as she turned to re-enter her private headquarters, I think I'm in the mood to watch the Light School musical again. Hey, Chrysalis, I'll join you! The moon was clear and visible in the equestrian sky. Now a half moon. That didn't matter to Applejack, though. It had been too long since her last run. Too long since she let herself truly go wild and all out. Already she could feel herself give in to her lycanthropy. Changes now all taking place simultaneously instead of one by one as they had a few days ago. No pain this time either. In fact, the only pain she felt was her amplified hearing picking up some weird, shrill cry coming from the Everfree Forest. But she paid it no mind. She let the feeling of her inner wolf alter her body once more. Transformation finished. Breathing with a slight raspiness that belied her full wolfish nature, she grinned eagerly, with her emerald eyes aglow, as she gasped at the bright half-orb in the sky. Tonight was going to be a good running night. Chapter 8. Hunting Legends. Nighttime in the Everfree Forest was both a beautiful and terrifying period of the day within the realm of its trees. On the one hand, the beauty lay in the fireflies and the semi-blooming luminescent flowers that lit up the dark interiors of the forest, becoming an almost surreal experience just to walk through. On the other hand, many of the forest's most dangerous predators, such as the cockatrice and manticore, came out to play at night, intended to strike on unwary prey, who ventured off into the beaten path while deep inside the forest. For Applejack, she only cared about the former right now, letting her legs stretch as she sped along the trail with breakneck speed. All the lights looked like blurry streaks in her vision. She wondered if this was what it was to be like a Pegasus, racing across the night sky with stars whizzing by one. But Applejack had no interest in gaining wings. She thought they'd just make her look weird. That, and her place was on the ground, just a simple earth pony apple farmer who lived with her siblings and grandmother. Her pace slowed down as her thoughts became more troubled. She knew that, eventually, she would have to face up to her lies and admit to being a werewolf. It just would be that it had to happen at the right time. When that time would come, she didn't know. But until then, everybody she knew would have to be kept in the dark. Her family, friends, she even lied in front of the princesses about this. And she couldn't shake the feeling that the longer they were unaware of the truth, the worse the repercussions. So Applejack kept on running, lost in her thoughts to attempt to escape them.
There! That should be the last of them.
Iron Will stood back to examine his work. He knew very well that he was not going to catch a werewolf tonight. Heck, he didn't expect for his entire stay in Ponyville. It didn't seem like the kind of place werewolves would hang around. The forest around Palisades, Van Hoover, or even Baltimore seemed more like to have evil shapeshifters lurking about. But that was to be thought about another day. Right now, Iron Will was in Ponyville, simply to self-learn how to hunt in general. Since he was a self-help coach, he figured with enough assertiveness and the right gear, this whole hunting thing would be pretty easy. Tonight's goal, a timber wolf. Iron Will had been surprised when Twilight had explained how normal wolves tended to avoid everfree forests, which he also figured applied to werewolves. So, timberwolves were the best bet he had going for him right now in the hunting seminar. To prepare for catching a werewolf, Iron Will planned to chase one out. He had set up traps outside the entrances to the forest, to be staffed by Willie and Nilly. Iron Will himself would go into the forest, track down a timberwolf, and then chase it out into the traps where his assistants would activate it, immobilizing the wooden canine. At least, that was the plan. However, Iron Will was taking no chances. Having donned a full-body latex sneaking suit, apparently Twilight's friend Pinkie Pie kept these things hidden in caches all over the country in case of full-body latex sneaking suit emergencies. The Minotaur was also equipped with the best stealth technology. Barnyard bargains could sell them. Armed with a compartmentalized belt that held various tools he needed for sneaking around. He also had a super strength rope that could be used for rappelling, and a special pair of night vision goggles that had 3 green lenses scopes, persistent as if they were points of a triangle. He also was well wearing the headset, just in case he needed to contact Willie and Nilly at any time for emergencies.
Alright, boys, Iron Will is going in,
he told his allies before he started to walk into the thick underbrush of woods, beginning to eat his quest to kill a werewolf. Once he had disappeared from view, the two ghosts just looked at each other before snickering, then collapsing with laughter. While they had held high respect for their boss, they honestly didn't believe this werewolf hunting thing was going to turn out well at all. They were still getting paid for this, though, so they really didn't have anything to complain about if it just meant sitting around and waiting to spring traps. Once recovered from their laughing fit, and figured it would take some time, Willie rummaged through the sack he had brought and revealed a pack of playing cards. Nilly did the same, and except of his host was a bottle of sweet Applejack Reserve cider, which he picked up in town while the boss was at Barnyard Bargains, and 2 tall signs. Filling up the glasses with cider, then toasting to their boss's fortune, they settled down to play some rounds of camps to pass the time. Angel
Rambone!
Bunny continued to make his long trek through the forest, looking for the poor sod that would become his first kill. Granted, it had been an hour, and he probably wasn't that far from flare-sized kites. But when all you could do is cover long distances as hop, there isn't much that could be done. The fact that he hadn't even found anything larger than a few ants to try and beat into submission was also sort of a downer. But would Punny Rambo give up the face of these odds? No! And so, Angel pressed on his desire to be like the larger-than-life action hero of some movie he obsessed over, at something approaching 1 mile an hour speeds.
This is going to take a while,
thought the rabbit.
Something interesting could at least happen.
It was too fast for the bunny to see, but whatever just came shooting out of the woods hit him mid-jump and sent him flying backwards into the underbrush before it disappeared into the woods. Dazed, Angel shook his head before he got up, wondering if this whole Rambone thing was a good idea. It took a few hundred meters for Applejack to come to a stop after something had collided with her face, kicking up dirt as she slowed to a halt. Once stationary, she brushed off her face with a paw, before working her features to make sure they were all right. They were. Now, what in Tom Laser was that? Wondered the werewolf. But she quickly lost interest in following that mystery as she decided to resume her run. The rationale for her running was, well, she just felt like it, as she had never felt the urge to run this much before her change. She reasoned it was a side effect of being a werewolf. But, since it didn't cause no punny no harm, she didn't see any problem with feeding the need for speed. Everfree Forest made a good obstacle course. Much better than anything the one back on the farm could be configured to. Along with the leaping and dodging, the terrain was uneven in places, and other natural hazards stood in her way. She took care to note patches of poison joke while she was mapping out possible courses for these runs on a previous night. Back, when she was partially a wolf, was still an unusual feeling, but now it was almost second nature. The thought of that made the wolf pony frown. Sure, she enjoyed these nightly runs, but they were never going to be the cost of her identity. She was Applejack, farm pony, element bearer, part of the apple family. She skidded to the stop, the feeling to run unopposed having left. For some reason, the thought of her parents made her realize she hadn't visited the Grange recently, not since this werewolf business had started. Feeling a bit teary-eyed, she couldn't stop herself from letting out a sorrowful "Arrrrrrrr" before picking herself back up and taking a route back home. So he knew what he had to do now. Iron Will was a good bit into the forest when he heard the sound howl. It sounded nothing like the quieter howls from earlier, those which Twilight said were timber wolves. That meant there was another kind of wolf in the woods. If Lady Luck smiled on him, it might be the fabled werewolf, but Iron Will didn't hold his breath. He wouldn't be that fortunate for this business to be over with that quickly. It would just be far too convenient. Judging the howls to be coming from his right, he immediately took off at a jogging pace to hunt his prize. He took care to note if there were any patches of flower called Poison Joke, which the unicorn had warned him about. According to her, the plants had some kind of magical effect to play jokes on those unfortunate enough to come in contact with the flora. Twilight also said, due to a misunderstanding with a zebra that lived in these woods, the unicorn had came into contact with the plant. But what happened was something she declined to go into detail about. Figuring it had to be something horrible, the Minotaur took every precaution to ensure he didn't land in the plant or fall victim to the effects itself. Unfortunately, in his efforts to avoid the plant, he ended up tripping over a sleeping manticore he totally had not seen and went flying into a tree. A brief second recovery later, and Iron Will found a very grumpy manticore looking right at him, Stringer at the ready. But where this may have scared a pony stiff, Iron Will was no pony. He was not one to back down from a wild animal challenging him simply because of an accident. No, this was time to get assertive.
If some pony tries to balk,
Spoke the Minotaur, looking at his opponent dead in the eye before shouting,
then show them that you rock!
and then, striking a flexing pose, the Manticore, surprised and confused, backed away as he was unsure what was going on, keeping the stinger in position should the creature try to attack. Noticing that his posing confused the creature, Iron Will decided to use that to his advantage. Striking another pose and flexing his big manticore muscles, he declared,
treat me as a pussover, and I'll give you the once-over!
While slowly moving his feet to gain a better position. This continued for a while. Iron Will keeping the creature at bay with his flexy and catchy one-liners taken straight from his self-help seminars. The Manticore just getting more and more confused as to what this creature was doing. It wasn't attacking. It wasn't retreating. It was dancing. Then, unexpectedly, the Manticore got up on his hind legs and began to flex his forearms in the same way as Iron Will. They say that impersonation is the sincerest form of flattery, and Iron Will was certainly getting an ego boost from inspiring a Manticore to go from possibly trying to kill an enemy to now engaging in a flex-off. His original mission forgotten, Iron Will took to the challenge to prove this upstart monster couldn't outflex a Minotaur.
You call that flexing? Iron Will shall show you what it means to flex!
Having given up on hopping, Angel was now walking at a slow pace across the forest floor. No way was he going back to jumping, when things could shoot at you and send you sailing out of the blue. He wouldn't have had to ever admit it, but that tragic-sounding howl, which had felt pretty close by, was also a reason for staying close to the ground, out of fear. Taking out a fake cigarette, a sliver of paper folded up to look like a bunny-sized cigarette, he pretended to light it before putting it in his mouth, the same way Pone Rambo did every time he wasn't beating the crap out of every single thing that moved. Hearing a commotion in the distance, Angel went to investigate. It looked like a manticore was dancing with some other creature. The other presence Angel had a vague recollection about, but it had been so long ago he couldn't clearly call forth the memory. He was stunned at what he had found. In a small clearing, the manticore and the bull-like creature, which for some odd reason was wearing a wireless headset, were slowly walking in a circle, never turning their backs to each other. Their arms kept making strange movements, making parts of them bulge out with visible veins, but not in a decidedly gross way. The cigarette fell out of Angel's mouth as his jaw dropped at the strange spectacle. The strange, yet oddly enough extremely entertaining spectacle. Deciding that the Avengers of Rambon could wait, Angel found a clear spot next to a tree and sat down to watch. Maybe this might break out into a fight, where Angel then could go in and smack the winner with his nunchucks, and then claiming both creatures as his first 2 kills. Nobody would know the truth. He just had to be patient. Big Mac heard the howl. Applejack was once again not in her room, the window open and curtains fluttering. Standing in his sister's doorway, the eldest child of the Apples had come to the silent decision. This would end tonight. Taking care not to wake Granny or Apple Bloom, the stallion descended to the first floor of the residence to try and find something to keep himself for what he was hoping would not be necessary. The sweat visible upon his brow as he entered the kitchen, knowing where the tool he sought was contained. Opening one of the cabinet drawers, he found it, a silver-bladed knife. It was not the sharpest knife he had access to, but it was not the edge he was concerned about. He had heard long ago that wolves had some kind of reaction if they came in contact with an object whose composition was mostly made out of silver. Big Mac did not know what would happen if a werewolf came into contact made out of something 100% silver, but if things went south tonight, he had to make the discovery. Weapon stowed, and he inhaled deeply to calm his nerves.
Please, sis.
Begged the stallion in his mind.
Don't make me use this.
He then proceeded to exit the house with the intention to save his sister, one way or the other. He never left the property. Much to his surprise, he feared the worst and decided to use the fenced gate that was the nearest to Ponyville. But he found Applejack well before he reached it. There, sitting in front of the gravestones of the Apple parents in the family graveyard, surrounded by roses, was his sister. Thankfully, she didn't look like a monster, just a regular earth pony. But Big Mac couldn't be too cautious.
Applejack?
He called out, her limp ears perking up. She craned her head around to see her brother standing a few yards off. Oh, hi, Big Mike. What y'all doing up this late?
I don't know. Might have been something in my dreams. Whatever it was, it don't compare to the scare you gave me when I looked into your room, found it empty with the window open.
Oh, right, it. I opened it up to get some air into the room. It was feeling stuffy, you know. It was an awkward few minutes as the siblings, one standing, one sitting, said and did nothing. Finally, it was Applejack who broke the silence. I'm listening. Walking over to where AJ sat, Big Man joined her in the front of the tombstones and embraced her with one of his forelegs.
So do I, sis. So do I.
Leaning into the warm embrace of her brother, Applejack nuzzled her face into his side before the tears began to fall. The stallion did nothing other than draw her tighter into the hug, feeling a tear come to his own eyes, but not allowing himself to fail in his duty to be the strong one, to support the rest of his family. He was just glad he didn't have to use that silver knife he had kept hidden. In front of the combined silhouette of her brother and sister sat the two tombstones. While most of the deceased residents of Ponyville were buried in the town cemetery, the Apple family had been one of the founding families, and so had set a small plot of land to be set aside where their deceased family members would be laid to rest, covered in the roses planted in the ground. But while most of the tombstones were standard slate style, the two Applejack and Big Mac sat in front of were of significantly higher quality than what most people would expect the Apple family to normally be able to buy. Their inscriptions read, Appleseed, loving father. Cornflower, loving mother. As Applejack and Big Mac sat in front of the twin graves, the final resting places of their parents, they both felt the inclination to look up in the sky. As they did so, a pair of shooting stars flew down across the sky. I saw him, said Applejack. They're watching over us, aren't they?
Yep.
He replied with warmth. The pair continued to sit until the shooting stars had long since disappeared into the darkness of the night, before getting up and returning to the Apple homestead. The respects to their parents paid for the time being, Big Mac made a little sure that his sister wouldn't meet the same fate as Appleseed and Cornflower. The dark figure had seen the whole scene unfold. As much as he wanted to get involved, it had not been the right time anyway. But the fact that she and her brother had been honoring their dead was what kept him chained to his machinations. He was not disappointed, however. In fact, he was rather pleased to see respect given to loved ones who had been lost. Granted, he had been somewhat responsible for their deaths 10 years ago, in an extremely indirect fashion. But even so, he would not raise a paw to interrupt something as sacred as mourning loved ones. However, the fact that she was still heavily tied to the family she was born to was delaying things. He could not intervene until her loyalties to her family were to the point of being questioned that she could be swayed. He would have to resort to unrefined methods if he had to when the time was right. But for now, he simply needed to wait. He found it amusing that this had been a plan 10 years in the making, but only because of that one split second decision of opportunity. There would be time to carry out the original plan, of course, but that was a given. Nosing his quarry and her companion leaving the graves, he too slunk back into the woods of Everfree to await the time to continue to scheme.
I'll get it,
Said a drowsy Fluttershy. throwing on the night robe, despite the fact that he had nothing to cover up, before turning on the lights and opening the door. What he found was a pair of extremely exhausted individuals, namely Iron Will in a scratched up latex sneaking suit, and Angel Bunny on his shoulder looking like he had gone to war. Oh, again, I'm giggling the heck out of myself right now.
Oh my gosh, what happened?
Inquired a concerned Fluttershy, trying to imagine what could have happened and completely overlooking the fact that Angel had been out at night without her permission. Hazily, Ironwill replied,
It's a long story, ma'am. One day falls a pack of angry timberwolves, a needle gun, and little traps being operated by the most drunken goats who had ever lived.
He then proceeded to pass out, falling right on top of her doorstop. Angel, still on the big guy's shoulders, went down with him. It was only then Fluttershy noted Ironwill's two goat partners, looking drunk out of their gourds and leaning on the fence near her mailbox. All the poor Pegasus could do was raise an eyebrow and go,
What?